So, as you guys know, I recently had a CACI hearing in which I won. It was for our client, Jalen. He came into the firm to hire about 2 months after I started. So obviously I just had my 2-year anniversary here. So the case lasted about 22 months from start to finish. I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a timeline as to what you can expect from a CACI hearing. First, obviously, your client is informed that their name has been placed on the Child Abuse Central Index. At that point in time, they come in and have a meeting with you. You will file what's called a request for a grievance hearing. This is basically the petition that starts the whole process of actually having the CACI hearing. From there, you will contact Child Welfare Services to set up the evidence viewing. The evidence viewing is all of the documents that are drafted by the social worker when conducting the investigation. This includes the forensic interview of the alleged victim and any documents they have supporting their case against your client. And once you set that viewing up, you'll actually go into Child Welfare Services. You'll sit down with the CWS worker and they will lay out in front of you on the table about 10 to 15 documents, which is considered the social worker's case in chief, which is the evidence that they're presenting at the hearing, okay? Once you review all of the evidence, including the forensic interview, you will set up an actual hearing date. From there, they will give you the date, you'll show up, and you'll actually have the CACI hearing. From there, you'll wait about a month or two to get the results. And then just a little step-by-step kind of about each process and what I found was super helpful. So you'll be, and this is what I was saying a minute ago, is that you'll be presented with all of the documents created by the social worker in charge of the investigation. So the investigation, the CACI investigation is led by a single social worker who conducts the forensic interview, as well as all the other interviews and stuff necessary to complete their investigation. Their investigation is these documents that are placed in front of you, okay? So you're going to have between 10 and 15 documents, as well as the forensic interview, which is the actual Chadwick interview, the live interview with the alleged victim. You will not be allowed to leave the room with any of this evidence. You can only take notes. You cannot take pictures of it, no scanning, no copying, literally just notes that you either handwrite or you take on your computer, okay? Each evidence viewing is roughly an hour and a half, depending on CWS timing. So for instance, I had Juanita, she was my CWS worker, so she had a specific schedule of other attorneys coming in. So really the evidence viewing is only a specific amount of time, between an hour and a half. Okay? The documents presented to you during this evidence viewing represent the case in chief of the social worker who has conducted the investigation, because they don't actually present during the CACI hearing, they just submit on the documents that you have reviewed already. The side note, and I was talking to Lawson about this a lot as well, you need to take extensive notes about page, paragraph, and line number of each item referenced in your notes, because there's an extended period of time where you will not have access to this evidence. So for instance, there was about 2 months between when I completed my last evidence viewing to when we had the hearing. So during those 2 months, you don't get a look at the documents anymore. It's just the notes that you've taken from the evidence viewing. That's the only stuff that you can rely on in preparing for the hearing. So you need to take extensive notes on page, paragraph, and line number. So that way when you get to the actual hearing and you're presented with 15, 5, 6-page documents, you have 100 pages of information in front of you, you need to be able to specifically go to the page, paragraph, and line number that you're referencing, because the social worker is going to ask, or you're going to have to sit there and look through the document again before you ask the question. The actual request for a hearing, after you complete the forensic interview, you'll request an actual grievance hearing with the social worker who helps facilitate the evidence viewing. In my case, it was Juanita. Depending on their availability, you will not get an actual date when you request it. So when you request an actual hearing date, they will send you a notice in the mail with at least 30 days notice before the hearing. So that's what happened is I requested a hearing. Approximately 30 days later, I got notice that the hearing was going to be in 30 to 45 days. So to total all that together, that means there was 2 months where I was unable to review anything besides the notes that I took in preparation for the hearing. Okay? The actual hearing itself, just a little procedure about who's in the room, what exactly happens. The hearing is conducted by the same social worker that you did the evidence viewing with. So in my case, like I said, that was Juanita. And Juanita was ultimately the social worker or the child welfare services worker who determined whether or not your client's name is up on the list. To me, that wasn't something that I was made aware of up front, that the person you're dealing with the whole time, you're scheduling the evidence viewing with, that is ultimately going to be the person that determines whether or not your client's name makes it on the list. So obviously be nice to them, okay? During the hearing, it's just the CWS worker and the equivalent of a courtroom clerk present in the room. You'll present an opening argument, opening statement. If you feel necessary, it's not required, okay? Then you'll present your case in chief, call any witnesses. After your witnesses, you then cross-examine, for lack of better terms, the social worker on the documents and forensic evidence that you viewed prior. Because they don't actually present a case in chief, they really just submit on those documents that they've already turned in to CWS. After that, what I thought was helpful as well, in my case, Juanita actually followed up and had a question or two that she wanted more clarification on, and it was something that I didn't ask the social worker about. So it was nice to know that there was somebody else in the room who was also on a fact-finding mission, for lack of better terms. Then you wait. That's what I was saying. It took about two months for me to get my actual results back. And then that takes me to the possible results, right? There's 3 possible results of a CACI hearing. One is unfounded, and this is when CWS has determined that the abuse did not occur, okay? Inconclusive, the middle result, is when CPS cannot determine what happened or cannot confirm the abuse occurred. And finally, substantiated, which is when CWS has determined that the abuse did occur. So this is a positive finding, this is a negative finding, and then somewhere in the middle, okay? The most important part about this is that of the 3 findings, only a substantiated allegation will lead your client's name to be on the list. So if you get an inconclusive or an unfounded, their name's not going on the list, okay? Exactly, because their name's already on the list. So that's a better way of phrasing it, is that their name gets removed off the list. Thank you. My client, like I said, his name is Jalen. He was accused of inappropriately touching his sister. Nobody was there to corroborate these accounts. Both the biological mom and grandma didn't believe her, okay? I had the biological grandma of both the client and the alleged victim come in to testify that the alleged victim is a liar and made all of this up. Grandma talks to the alleged victim on the phone every week, and the alleged victim explicitly told her that she made these allegations up so that way she could go live with her father after her grandma told her that she couldn't. However, even despite all of this mountain of what I would consider evidence against these allegations, my result was still inconclusive, okay? So I did not even get an unfounded result. My result was inconclusive. So even after having grandma come in and testify that the alleged victim has told her several times she made this up, basically the result was that even after all of that, Child Welfare Services still felt like they didn't have enough evidence to prove one way or the other. So that therefore we get the inconclusive result. That's not the result that I wanted. I wanted an unfounded result, but I would still characterize this as a win because my client's name was removed off of the CACI list. So at the end of the day, his name is not on that list anymore.